MKUltra was a covert government experiment by the American government of its own people. MKUltra contained many sub-projects, all of which involved both unwilling and willing test subjects. This experiment lasted decades, starting in the 1950s, and had countless test subjects and victims. However, the experiment goal was to learn if mind control was possible through the use of many different drugs and certain torture methods. The many sub-projects varied from suboral frequency blast to erase memory to a truth serum drug. In the 1950s and 1960s, at the height of the Cold War, the United States government feared that the Soviets, the Chinese, and the North Korean agents were using mind control to brainwash American prisoners of war in Korea.
While the CIA's project MKUltra can be seen as an attempt to understand an enemy, it was more along the lines of an attempt to gain control of the population, similar to Oceania in 1984. In 1984, people were often tortured and manipulated unwittingly. This was done in an attempt to control the behavior of those people, similar to MKUltra. During the project, many people were experimented on in an inhumane manner.
The program involved more than 150 humane, or rather inhumane, experiments. These included psychedelic drugs, paralytics, and electroshock therapy. Sometimes the test subjects knew they were participating in a study, but other times they had no idea, even when the hallucinogens began to take effect. The Nazis did inhumane experiments on unwilling victims, causing the establishment of the Nuremberg Laws. The Nuremberg Laws basically outlawed the inhumane conditions these people faced. By 1950, our own government was doing the same kind of experiments on unwilling subjects. A quote from 1984 suggests, In your case, said O'Brien, the worst thing in the world happens to be rats. While it may seem defendable, they were doing this as an attempt to learn mind control. Another quote said, There was an old age dream in your intelligent business about making people do things against their will, to give information, to perform acts they didn't want to perform. And lastly, with a quote from 1984, Big Brother is watching you.
In 1984, O'Brien used the emotions of Winston to convince him he is an ally, despite him being extremely loyal to the party. He not only tricks Winston, he is the one who brainwashes and tortures him. During MKUltra, the government, with the help of prostitutes, were able to deceive men into going into safe houses, which they were drugged without their knowledge. Operation Midnight Climax is an MKUltra project in which prostitutes employed by the American government lured unsuspecting men into CIA safe houses. Operation Midnight Climax was an MKUltra project in which prostitutes employed by the American government lured unsuspecting men into CIA safe houses, where experiments with the aforementioned drugs were carried out. At the heart of Operation Midnight Climax was the question of whether or not giving an unsuspecting person a heavy dose of LSD, in this case, would make them more susceptible to suggestion and more likely to spill secrets they would otherwise keep. A quote from 1984, O'Brien was a person who could be talked to. This quote is used to explain how O'Brien used his friendship with Winston to lure him in, very similar to how the CIA used prostitutes to lure men in.
Perhaps one did not want to be loved so much as to be understood. O'Brien had tortured him to the edge of lunacy, and in a little while, it was certain he would send him to his death. It made no difference. In some sense, that went deeper than friendship. They were intimates, somewhere or other, although the actual words might never be spoken. There was a place where they could meet and talk. O'Brien was looking down at him with an expression which suggested that the same thought might be in his own mind. When he spoke it, it was an easy, conversational tone.
The CIA knew that men would not question any unusual behaviors or anything suspicious as they desired sexual acts from prostitutes. Operation Midnight Climax was established in order to study the effects of LSD on non-consenting individuals. Prostitutes on the CIA payroll were instructed to lure clients back to safe houses, where they were surreptitiously plied with a wide range of substances, including LSD, and monitored behind one-way glass. The prostitutes were instructed in the use of post-coital questioning to investigate whether the victims could be convinced to involuntarily reveal secrets. The victims were sometimes fed subliminal messages in attempts to induce them into involuntary actions, including criminal activity such as robbery, assault, and assassination. In 1984, Winston is eventually tortured to the point where he is convinced to throw his lover under the bus instead of himself, saying, do it to Julia, not me, Julia. I don't care what you do to her. Tear her face off, strip her to the bones. Not me, Julia, not me.
Lastly, we would like to cover the specific drugs that are used in MKUltra and some of the effects after taking them. MKUltra included experiments with drugs such as MDMA, mescaline, heroin, barbiturates, methamphetamine, and psilocybin. In quote, Frank Olson, a U.S. Army civilian biochemist and biological weapons researcher, jumped to his death from a hotel room in New York City, suffering a severe reaction to LSD that he consumed in part of a CIA-led research program on the intelligence applications of drugs and other behavioral modification techniques. Some of these drugs did damage to the personalities of the people being administered them. For one instance, a man hurt his wife after never hurting her and had been a criminal, pistol whipped 2 or 3 before he was experimented on. He was forcibly given LSD, and he attributes the violence to that. Another victim cut himself in an attempted suicide. He was taken away, sewed up, and thrown in a large hole as punishment.